Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Ever since my guests burst on the jazz scene in the latter part of the 20th century, the Brooklyn-born, Harlem-based vocalist, guitarist, bandleader, composer Allan Harris has reigned supreme and as the most accomplished and exceptional singer of his generation, aptly described by the Miami Herald as the artist blessed with the warmth of Tony Bennett, the bite and rhythmic sense of Sinatra, and the sly elegance of Nat King Cole. So I want to welcome to my show Allan Harris.
Hello, how are you?
Well, I'm fine, Allan, and I spoke to you before, and I realized what a fabulous artist you really are. So I want to know what inspired you to write the song cycle Cross That River. Let's start by telling our audience about that.
Okay, the Cross That River is a song cycle, and it's also a play, a musical, and a concert series. It tells of the trials and tribulations of a runaway slave. It starts at 1855. Runaway slave from Louisiana crosses over the river, Saving River, to Texas, and becomes a black cowboy right after the Great Cattle, right after the Civil War, 20 years. And it tells the unknown story that 40% of the cowboys during that period of time were people of color, men and women of color. Not many people know that. And I decided to do that for a number of reasons. One is I just love the West. I love horses, and I grew up. My father, he rides, and I ride. And we had a horse. We still do have a horse farm in West Pennsylvania. And also, I noticed that I wanted to empower a lot of children, disenfranchised children, children in inner cities, who their only really idols that they have to look up to now are rap artists and things of that nature. Nothing wrong with that, but I felt that they needed to hear and be exposed to something more. And when I was growing up, the only thing that you really saw in the media was porters, dishwashers, field workers, and that was in movies and that. Little did I know until later on in my life that there was a noble profession that we did at that time. That was bringing cattle and that to the north, whatever, from the west. So I decided to give these children a little more a little history on that, just to empower them, let them know that we just come from more than just picking cotton and that. We were part of this American psyche. We helped build and reconstruct this country after the Civil War.
Yes, and Allan, you are, it's not that you're so unusual, except for the fact that I don't usually hear somebody talk about having a horse and being a cowboy. It's a very unusual thing. Don't you agree?
Well, it isn't for me, but it is for a lot of people who aren't exposed for it, because for some reason it was whitewashed out of our psyche come the 30s, 20s and 30s of the history of our country. But prior to that, most of your agrarian lifestyle, farmland and that, prior to slaves and up afterward, was worked by our people. You know, we were the horsemen. The word cowboy comes from the plantation term cowboy, boy, go get the cow. And matter of fact, prior to movies in the 1900s, movies, if you called a white man a cowboy, it was a derogatory term. It was.
Oh.
Because it was only labeled for black and dark-skinned people to work cattle and work horses. It was considered a very derogatory job until after the Civil War when meat and everything was depleted. And then white boys started to jump on it because they found out they could make a living because the South was destroyed, so they went out west. But when they went out west, they found out they had to compete with a lot of the slaves who ran out to that area to make their way, working on the cattle trails and that. And so I wanted to bring that to light.
Yeah, and you talked about children, so I want to know what inspired you to work with kids.
Well, for one thing, the images that I had, fortunately for me, I grew up around a myriad of men and women who worked the land and who understood what it took to get up in the morning and do what you had to do to survive. I worked alongside them. And being that I am a jazz artist and that I do a lot of clinics and that I was exposed, and also they were exposed to children and young adults who really don't understand our history enough to know that we come from a well-rounded people. It's only because of the Jim Crow laws and segregationists in the latter part of the 19th century, 20th century, that they whitewashed us from all those books. Because prior to that, we were really the affirmative action. I mean, you had to, in order to work the land, we worked it side by side between our white counterparts. And once again, it was only after our white male counterparts found out that they could make money doing what we did, that they brushed us out of the books and out of the ledgers.
You know, I think this is very admirable that you really are working with children and you're actually participating in historical, shall I say, historical stories so that people really understand what it was like for the black man and, of course, women and children as well. And so now we have to really turn to your craft. And your craft is that of a musician, and as we said, you're part of the jazz scene. And so tell us more, and just, it's not more, just begin by telling my audience all about how Allan Harris got started.
Well, I come from a wonderful line of people who exposed me to that. My mother was a classical pianist. She was the first graduating class from performing arts. My aunt went to performing arts also, and she was an opera singer who / became blues singer because she ran into a man called Clarence Williams. Clarence Williams was Bessie Smith's manager, and he also wrote Baby Won't You Please Come Home, and he managed Louis Armstrong for a while. He went to a recital that my mother and my aunt did. They won the Apollo competition in the 40s. And he was there, and he picked my aunt out of the lineup and wanted to mentor her because she looked a little bit like Bessie Smith. You see pictures of her. Unfortunately, he seduced her, and she had a child by him, my first cousin. He had a child by him. But because of that, I received a lot of benefits from that because we used to frequent his home in Queens, which was right down the street from Louis Armstrong's home. And in turn, a lot of people would come through his doorway. Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Sarah Vaughan, they all knew Clarence Williams. And in turn, I received a lot of benefits from that. I want to say it again because I was exposed to that. Couple that with my aunt. One of my aunts had a soul food restaurant down the street from the Apollo Theater called Kate's Soul Food Place, which is on the album cover, Jimmy Smith's Home Cooking. And I used to go there every Sunday, and back in those days, the kids got in free for matinees. And we used to eat at her restaurant, and we'd see everyone come in there and order food from the Apollo. It would be Clyde McPhatter, The Temptations, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald. So as a young child, you had to sit there and be quiet, but I soaked in a lot of that. And I guess through osmosis rubbed off on me, because here I am today enjoying the benefits of that and also enjoying the benefits of being a jazz artist because of that.
Well, do you think that musicians and people who do the things that you do are sort of born with that? Allan, give us your opinion about the fact that you and various other people in your field are sort of born with that genius to be able to play jazz and do various other things in your craft.
Well, that's a good question. There's so many answers that I'm just going to narrow down to a couple of them from my viewpoint and just from being exposed and sitting at the feet of some wonderful mentors. You know, I've gained from them that it's not just that you're born with it, but it does help. There has to be a lust, desire to want to express yourself through this medium. And the wonderful thing about playing jazz is each time that you do a melody, a song, or you do a new adventure with a group of people, it's always different. It's wonderful. It's always different, but at a high level of craftsmanship. That's one. And I feel that once you start doing that at a young age, it's like a drug. You love to do it over and over again, and you seek out like minds who can do that. Being a person of color, we come from a history where to express ourselves, there was only a few avenues that you can go. One was dance, in vaudeville. The other was the blues. And then after that, the doors of segregation closed down a little bit, and we were allowed to play with our white counterparts, and that's where jazz came into mode, improvisation and that. So getting back on track about your question, I feel that it's just part of the American psyche. If you want to play this music, yeah, you have to be born with it, I believe. You have to have the desire. But that only takes you but so far, because I'm sure you and I know a myriad of artists who like to do this, and they're born with it, but they're not really that good.
Yeah.
They're not really good. It's like, I really want to play well, but I'm not that good, so I decided to become a manager, a teacher. So, but, yeah, it helps that you're born with that desire, but it's not necessarily the all to be all, because I've run into some friends of mine and players, my peers, who come from a background of non-music at all. Their family has no musical talent at all, and they're the only one in the family who carried it, who jumped into music well. And they become marvelous at their instrument, even though they didn't come from that and they weren't born to that. So I think it's more than just having a gene. I think you have to have the desire to express yourself. And whether it's a painter, a dancer, whatever it is, there's some certain artists who would have excelled in anything. It just so happened that they were dropped into that box of music.
Mm-hmm. So, Allan, do you think that music transforms you in ways you can't even describe?
Oh, wow, that's a wonderful question. Yes, it does. And the wonderful thing about music, especially when you're interacting with other people, and they don't necessarily have to be other musicians. They could just be a listener who appreciates it, and you two exchange formalities and niceties and secret things together. Yes, music transforms you, because why does it transform you? It makes you smile from the heart. Because there is no one who listens to music with a group of people, with a loved one, with a band member, with whoever it is. When you're surrounded by like-minded people who are enjoying what you enjoy, all of you are snapping your hands or snapping your hearts together. It's a wonderful form of communication without speaking. It really is. Yes, music does transform you, and it does take you to a place that no other art form can take you. I mean, when you're a painter, you paint something, you move on, and then people are like voyeurs. They look at what you've done. When you're a dancer, yes, you're under the confines of your physical exertion. Once you're tired, that's it. And the audience really can admire what you do, but they're really not going to join in the dancing with you. But with music, there's something that everyone can glean from hearing you perform. They remember a time that they had their first kiss. They remember the time they first were married. Remember the time they first failed at something. Music affects you in so many different ways, and you feel that from your audience. Yes, to answer your question.
Now, let's talk a little bit about jazz and blues, because everybody knows about, of course, jazz and blues, but what's different about jazz? Let's start with that one.
Okay.
What makes jazz a good thing to listen to? Because jazz is very complicated, isn't it?
It is. Oh, we're a complicated people. We're Americans. Everyone keeps forgetting that. Yes, people of color, yes, we are in the forefront of it, because that was the avenue that we had to go to, because we were rejected out of the classical. We were rejected out of the things that made our white counterparts money in the early part of the 20th century. So we said, to hell with it. We're just going to take the blues, our blues, learn what we can from our neoclassical teachers, which were mainly white, and create our own form, which we did. It is an American form. It is truly, Tony Bennett said this to me one time, and I use it all the time, jazz is our gift to the world. Jazz is when the world looks at jazz, they see what is the best of us, of people of color, what we have done. We've added so much to the melting pot. And everyone's like, oh, man, we're not part of the melting pot. We're being civil rights, Jim Crow laws, things that happen. Yes, but yes, we did have that. We still have a little bit of it. But when you talk about jazz, that is a true art form that comes out of the pain and suffering of that field that we had to work in, that rejection, that we weren't allowed to sit in the balcony during a classical concert, that we were told that black folks can't play classical music, black folks can't read right, black folks can't talk right. We decided to make it a conscious effort to do something that even excelled their far expectations, to the point that the world now looks at America as jazz.
Mm. So now let's move to your new album, which is called The Black Bar Jukebox.
Yes.
Oh, you sound like you're going to have a great time telling me about that.
Oh, boy, yeah, it is. Black Bar Jukebox, the name says it. When I was growing up in Brooklyn and in Harlem, every club that you went into, and my Aunt Theodosia, because she was a blues singer, she performed in a few of them, Lennox Lounge, Reggie's Bar. I would tag along, and every place that you went to, the place was known for its jukeboxes. And the bigger and more florid and more colorful the world of served and whatever this jukebox was there, the more popular the place became. But the thing about jukeboxes was this. If you had that coin and you put that coin in for the 3 to 4 minutes of that song that you picked, everybody had to pay attention to that song, and no one admonished you for it. You were king or queen for that moment. You could sing along sometimes, and the jukebox was there's no racial element to the jukebox. You could hear everything from country music to Earth, Wind and Fire to Johnny Cash to Miles Davis to Motown to whatever on that jukebox. And if you pressed that number, that was your moment, and everybody here, there was a certain etiquette that people did. They sat there in the diner or in the dance hall, and you put that coin in, everybody listened to it, and no one admonished you for it. And I grew up listening to that. When I'd go there, everyone had their favorite song that they would play, and you didn't even have to look over at the jukebox. You knew who was playing. You knew who was at the jukebox playing the song because everyone played the song they liked. Play J6. Oh, that must be Mr. Velvety because he loves that song. You know, everyone had their song. So I decided to recreate the flavor of that. What I meant by the flavor was do a number of songs on a record that just had a different flavor from beginning to end, and use jazz as the template. I did some pop, some country, some soul music, a couple originals, but always used jazz as a template because that's what I felt when I, as a child, sitting there in front of those big, giant, colorful jukeboxes and watching the adults put their coin in and act crazy.
Allan, today our life has changed dramatically, and so you see people walking down the street with their iPhone or any kind of phone, and they're listening to music. From my perspective, there was something very special about listening to a jukebox, as you said, because
you did it together.
You did it together. So how do you feel about the change in the whole music scene? And now everybody just listens on their little phone and they listen on their computer. Do you think that's good, or do you think that they're missing something?
They're missing a lot. I mean, when you and I grew up, I don't know how old you are, and I would never ask you, of course. But when you and I grew up, we were always told by our parents, our friends, our peers, our mentors, our teachers, people who we ran into that we learned things from. The first thing they always said was this: use your imagination. That's what they said. Now, besides using imagination, they always interacted with you. They interacted. When you wanted to know something, there wasn't go to YouTube and learn it or put the headphones in. You had to sit at their feet and they either told you a story, you had to practice it, or read about it. Remember your mother used to say, go read a book.
Sure.
And then come back and tell her what you read. You tell her, explain to me what you read. There is something missing in that muscle in the minds of these young people who are constantly. I'm on the subway with them. I look on the subway, and everyone is in their own little world.
Yeah.
They have the headphones on, they're texting, they're whatever it was. There's no interaction with your fellow man. I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, everyone has to do what they have to do, and technology moves on. I understand that. But there's something about the human condition that gives us the pleasure of talking and communicating with each other, because when you exchange that with your fellow man, it makes you grow in ways that you can't do on your own. Yeah. It really does. But when you take that away from us, we lose a lot of things. The first thing we lose is empathy for your fellow man. You start to lose that connection of looking at that homeless man and walking by him saying, oh, the hell with it. He should have worked hard like I did. I'm not getting no money. We start losing that empathy. Children start watching things on movies and TVs that you and I growing up would never watch, like Saw 3, Saw 4, horror movies that depict things that I can't even imagine, with the things that they see, because they lose that empathy. Because when you're with yourself all the time, when you have those headphones in, and you're at the mercy of your own machinations, you start to create things that are unhealthy for you.
Right.
Because you don't have to bounce it off your fellow man, because you feel that I know it all now.
Yeah. I think everything you're saying is definitely true. And so let's move on a little bit. And you won the Downbeat Critics Poll Award for the Rising Star Jazz Vocalist.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's amazing, isn't it?
I loved it. I'm so happy about that.
Now, well, tell our audience a little bit about that, and I'm going to put you on the spot. If it's okay with you, I'm going to ask you, can you just give us a piece of your favorite music? Just give me a little song.
Wow, I love your questions. You're good. Okay, what are my favorite song or songs?
You can just start with a song.
Okay. Well, let me see. There's a song that my mother used to sing to me all the time, and she made me learn this song. And I'm saying made me because I didn't want to do it, and she was a strict disciplinarian. She came out of the school of the Harlem Renaissance, where children of color just had to do what they had to do because they had the weight of their forefathers on their shoulders. They were the first actual generation that knew about freedom. The people from they actually the first generation of colored children, who were free.
Yeah.
Their mothers had relatives that were slaves that they knew, so they carried it with them. My mother's generation. So she said, "My son, when you're going to learn a song, you're going to learn it properly. You're going to learn how to speak properly. You're going to learn that other." So she taught me a song called "You Go to My Head," and I love that song. I recorded it on my first CD, and I think I might bring it out again. You go to my head, and you linger like a haunting refrain. Very difficult song for a young kid to learn. I learned it when I was 9 years old, and I thought she was the meanest person in the world. I did. She said, "You gotta learn this song or else." But I'm so grateful because I think it pushed a button inside of me, starting on that level of learning a song. I mean, she didn't start with a little ditty or a little blues tune, which she could have done. She immediately threw me into the fray and said, there was supposed to be a talent show in my school, and they picked me to sing a song, and I know what to do. My mother being part of, she didn't want her child to look bad in front of her. She said, "You're going to learn a song." So I figured it'd be some little ditty that I would learn. No, you go to my head. Are you kidding? 9-year-old kid learning, you go to my head. So it was a 2-week boot camp with her. Believe it or not, it's my favorite song of all time because not only does it remind me of her, it reminds me of what it is that you need to get to if you want to excel in something. It takes work.
There you go. So you just brought up something very interesting, and that is the whole notion of it takes work. And so tell our audience about how many hours do you spend and did you spend on actually practicing? Because what you're doing is not an easy thing, and also very interesting that you should mention the whole idea of what it takes to get to where you are.
That's right. It comes from a people. I sat at the feet of a people who were told, no matter how hard you work, you're never going to be good enough because of the way you look. And I grew up with those people, and those people bucked the system. They said, "You're going to hear this all through your life, young man. You don't know it now because we love you and we coddle you and you're going to a good school because your father's working 2 jobs, blah, blah, blah. But you're going to find out in life that you're going to have to try twice as hard as your other counterparts in this country. Don't let that deter you. Don't let it deter you. So we're going to start by building not only your character and giving you discipline, we're going to show you what it means to have a work ethic." And that's what they instilled upon me. And they did it very gently, too, but they were consistent. When you came home, you had to practice. There was no, my mother said, "Oh, you want to play guitar? Okay. And you want to learn how to sing? Okay, fine. Learn the Motown, do all that, My Girl, do whatever you want to learn. Jimi Hendrix, fine. I know you're a young man, but there's going to be a time when you come home You're going to practice for 2 hours, and I'm going to show you what you need to practice. Not because I'm being mean, not because I want you to sound a certain way, just that as a child, as a young man of color, I have to give you an edge other than your white schoolmates, which you don't know right now. You're only 9 and 10 years old, but as you get older, it's going to come to surface. I didn't believe it, of course, but I fought it. Lo and behold, when I became a teenager, all those lessons, all those disciplines, all those things have not let me stay out late, not let me dress a certain way, learning may I please, thank you, excuse me, ma'am, all the stuff that she instilled upon me. It's been a blessing for me because I carry those lessons to me in my now that I'm an older statesman doing what I'm doing. I love it.
That's wonderful.
It's called work.
Work. And a work ethic is really very important.
It sure is.
Oh, boy. So what was your inspiration for writing this new song called Miami?
Oh, I did a concert down in Miami a few years ago. And at the concert, we had CD signing and all that, but it was a beautiful sight. It was about a mile away from the inlet there on Miami Beach. Beautiful, beautiful water overlooking Fisher Island and that. And me and a couple of the guys, we still had our suits on. We just rolled up our pants legs, and we just sat on the rocks by the water there on Key Biscayne. Mm-hmm. And the sun was coming up. We were out late. It was about 2:30. No, it was later than that. It was about 4 o'clock. The sun was just creeping up over. And we looked down the beach, and there was a beautiful young girl running down the beach. She had a bathing suit underneath this gossamer sort of flowing outfit. I mean, she was really beautiful. And behind her was this guy running after her. And this guy was good looking, all buff, young. They were young, you could tell. He was screaming out her name. He ran up to her and grabbed her by the shoulder. She pulled away from him. And I said, uh-oh. But they were just playing, I could tell, after a while. After a while, he grabbed her again. She turned around and they kissed, and then they walked off. And I based upon what I just saw, and it's called Miami.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So the song Daughters on Black Box Jukebox, mm-hmm. does it have a particular significance to you? And why did you choose that song to record?
John Mayer. I like John. I don't listen to a lot of pop because I keep going back to I grew up. I'm getting sound like a broken record, but I'm sorry. When I was a younger man, when I was growing up, the radio stations and that, they played everything. They played everything from Jimi Hendrix to Miles Davis. There was no box to put in. This guy John Mayer, I really like him. I like his music. Being a guitar player, he's a hell of a guitar player. But this one song he wrote, Daughters, speaks a lot. Why? Because I'm married to a wonderful woman, and I really understand what they have instilled in her as being their daughter, and how I am the benefactor of what they've done for her. They raised her properly, and in turn helped me fall in love with someone like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my friends who have daughters, they're really raising them correctly. They really are. They're exposing them to a lot of things. They bring them to my shows sometimes. So I think subconsciously I did this song for them. It's a pretty song, and it speaks to the feminine side of us males. And plus, being an artist, I'm tapped into that anyway. Mm-hmm. So I decided just to do that song mainly because I just enjoyed it and wanted to just pay homage to the dads who are raising these wonderful dads and mothers who are raising these wonderful daughters of the future here.
Allan, the song Daughters on Black Box Jukebox, does it have a particular significance to you? And why did you choose that song to record? And give our audience also a little taste of a verse of that song. Mm-hmm.
I will. Well, the song speaks to those parents, and I especially to the men in my life, the guys I know. You know, I have some really wonderful, strong male friends of mine who have daughters, and they're really not imparting that fear upon them. You know, don't get pregnant, come home late, let me meet your boyfriend. All the things that when I was growing up, that was tantamount to the girls that I knew. It's a whole new day now, and there's a much gentler way now that they're raising children, especially women. Women now have a say in things, and I see that the way they're raising their daughters is just wonderful. They're raising them as well-rounded equals to their male counterparts. So I wrote that. I did this just to say, wow, I'm loving what you're doing. I like how you're raising them because I'm in love and married to a woman who was raised that way too. And the lyrics say it. The lyrics are, so fathers, be good to your daughters. Daughters will love like you do. Girls, they become lovers who turn into mothers. So mothers, be good to your daughters too. You know, it says that they're going to look at the woman that you in your life raised you, your mother. Mm-hmm. That's going to be this daughter one day. And the way you treat her is the way she's going to interact with every person, male and female, for the rest of her life. Well, and if you love her, this is how you need to conduct yourself around her and to guide her.
That's very special words, and I hope that the audience hears that out loud. And
especially Trump.
There you go. But we won't get into politics.
I know.
Right
I just want to throw that in there.
There you go. Okay. So I understand now that you've become a D'Angelico guitar artist. How did that come about?
Oh, my goodness, girl. Let me tell you. A friend of mine, Jim Felber, was the rep for Gibson guitars, which I love Gibson guitars. You know, I played them all through my career. I have a few of them. But D'Angelico is a boutique line. It's a boutique craftsman-made guitar by the D'Angelico family. And they're played by anybody from, there's so many wonderful artists who played them. Grant Green had one. Anyway, he left Gibson and said, look, I'm going to be working with D'Angelico, and they're looking for a jazz artist who can do rock, R&B, and all of it. And I mentioned the name. One of the reps saw you perform. They saw your site, and they're really interested in speaking with you. I said, D'Angelico? He said, yeah. I said, interesting, but they're not really known for making that sort of guitar, you know, because I play jazz and blues and everything together. He said, well, they've come out with new prototypes to compete with Gibson and Fender in them. I said, really? He said, well, come down to the showroom, which I did, and I was just enamored with what they had. Really, So after I played a few of them, I didn't even ask them the price tag because I didn't want to. I said to them, okay, so where do we go from here? Because these guitars are handcrafted and they're well done. Do I get a loaner? Do I get a discount? What's going on? He said, oh, no, we're going to give you one.
Oh.
I said, really? He said, yeah, just take one home. And if you need another one, we'll send you one later on. But you have a couple of big shows. All we ask is that you're being filmed with it. I said, no kidding. So I stayed with him a couple of hours, and I played the guitar, and next thing you know, I'm walking out the door with one, and it's on my site, and I'm cheesing like a Cheshire cat. So I love the guitars. It plays great.
That's good, and you're so lucky, actually. So we're going to go out on your song Miami, and just before we do that, I'd like you to have the last word.
Okay. Well, the last word is this. I mean, we're so fortunate to be able to listen to this music and not to have someone lean over our shoulder to tell us what we need to do. I mean, we embrace such a wonderful country. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on which we're cleaning up now, which is good. But listening to this music called jazz and listening to what we're offering, what we're saying to the world, is just a gift that we have to start treasuring more and more and more, because it's just a wonderful thing that we've created for the world to look at, because the world looks at us as something special, and we need to start embracing that ourselves instead of highlighting those who are trying to tear it down.
Those are really good words and words of wisdom. Allan, if our audience wants to see you and also buy your music, how do they do that? Of
course, I'm on iTunes. I'm on AllanHarris.com, Facebook. I Twitter a lot. And I'm going to do a show tomorrow night at Rockwood Music Hall. At 6:30, I do a show, Rockwood Music Hall, down Orchard Street. And it's a wonderful venue. I have an incredible band, and some talented cats and women with me. And we're doing the Crossett River show, concert of the Crossett River music. And I revamped some of the music. So if you get a chance, come down to that. And then in the wintertime, I'll be a week at Dizzy's at Dizzy Coca-Cola's at Jazz Lincoln Center with Eric Reed. I'm doing a tribute to Billy Strayhorn for a week. And you can find where I am just on site, but if you get a chance, come down tomorrow and say hello to me because we'll have a lot of fun. And you get to see some Americana music coupled with jazz, bluegrass, and R&B.
Well, I hope that our audience who live in New York and those who are visiting New York get to see you because you are a very special man. So I want to thank you, Allan Harris, for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Well, thank you for having me on it. I'm really honored that you would ask me to do this. And I have to just say one thing to your audience members. We are lucky to have someone like you because it's nice. It's really nice for someone who's just thinking out of the box and embracing us artists. Thank you ever so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.